become a staple for many households with babies and young children. But a shocking investigation has found that some baby food pouches are failing to meet key nutritional needs.
Yeah, so today we are joined by BBC Panorama producer Catrin Nye to unpack the findings alongside nutritionist Charlotte Stirling-Reed. Morning.
Morning. Both of you. Good to have you. So, Catrin, what actually inspired this whole investigation? Where did it all come from?
So I think, like a lot of people, over the last few years, I've become a bit more aware of what I'm eating, what I'm feeding my kids.
Yeah.
And I started looking into these pouches because I'd used them. I'd used quite a lot of them. When I went online, started doing my research, as I would, I didn't find much information. I found a few rows on Mumsnet about how good they were. Some people saying they're amazing, some people saying they were terrible. I thought it was quite confusing. And what I realised was that these things didn't even exist 20 years ago. And now they're one of the main ways that people feed their babies, but there'd been very little public scrutiny in that time about how good or bad they were.
You see them all the time, don't you? People go on holidays with them, you see them out and about. It's actually a little bit worrying.
When we were kids, it was jars and tins, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. And this, I guess they're still around, but these, just looking at them, they all look incredibly healthy. I've used some of these with my son, you know? So how do you deep dive? If you can't find it online, what's the next stage?
So we spoke to a lot of experts, dozens and dozens, to get a view of what people who really know what they're talking about think of these things. We spoke to the World Health Organization, we spoke to the government's former chief nutritionist, and like you say, these pouches are covered in health claims, and that was one of the main things that these experts told us, that there are so many claims on the packets that often parents using them end up feeling like they're a lot healthier than they actually are, and end up feeling like these are better than they could make at home. And that was definitely one of the main concerns of all the experts that we spoke to. They were very, very keen to say that no parent should feel bad for having used these.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you pick one up, you are going to think it's very healthy.
And these are actually top brands that this is happening to. I mean, Piccolo and Little Freddy have said their packaging accurately represented the key ingredients and flavours contained in their products, while Ella's Kitchen said it would never use misleading claims. Heinz did not address our questions on marketing.
Charlotte, what's your take? I mean, firstly, I've got your book. It's incredible.
Oh, you're very kind.
You know,
Thank you.
So, I've cooked for my son from your book. You know, it's good. But I guess this can form part of that diet, right? I mean, everyone's really busy. You're running out. You think, oh, we'll take a yogurt or something with us, or a squeezy or a sucky with us, on the way. They're not necessarily bad.
No, and I think that's such an important message to get across. There's a lot of parents who are panicking a little bit at the moment, and what we want to get across about this is not that these are bad. They are absolutely fine as every now and then food items. They're fine if you're stuck in a rut. You throw them in the bag on your way out and offer them every now and then. Exactly. And that is exactly how we want them to be used.
So your normal diet.
That's it. It's not a meal replacement. It's not a regular meal replacement. And some research does suggest that parents are using these quite a lot, and that is what we want to try and alter. We also want to change what the brands are doing, but it's really important to get that message across that they're not everyday items, but they are fine to throw in your bag and use every now and then.
The responsibility lies in both the manufacturer and also the parent, right? Because there's a bit of parental responsibility to say, well, you should be looking into what your children are eating, but at the same time, you're looking at the packaging, thinking, well, all this looks pretty healthy. So let's go through your findings. So the first one was level of iron, right?
Iron, yeah. So we took 18 pouches to a lab and had them tested because we wanted to learn more than you could see on the packet. And so we did look at iron levels. And what we found across 6 savoury pouches that we looked at were quite low levels of iron. An infant should have around 7.8 milligrams of iron every day. And for example, one of the pouches we looked at, a Heinz pouch containing meat, had 0.3 milligrams. Right. So less than 5% of what an infant should be having in a day. So quite low.
Charlotte, why is iron so important?
So iron's actually really important for young babies and toddlers, and the reason for that, they're growing. And growth, iron is an important nutrient for making that happen. They're also important for iron is also important for creating red blood cells, which again is important for moving nutrients and oxygen around the body. So it is a very vital nutrient for young babies. And a lot of parents don't know that, and they might not even have any idea whether these products do or don't contain iron.
Well, all the companies, including Heinz, stressed they were committed to providing nutritious products for babies and that their products were intended as a complementary part of the child's varied weaning diet. Little Freddie added that its products were not intended to be meal replacements for one-year-olds, and Ella's Kitchen encouraged parents to include a range of iron-rich foods to support their child. OK, let's talk about sugar, because sugar's a massive thing. And some of these companies can put no added sugar, but then the product can be high in sugar. I don't understand.
Yeah, so we found in our research dozens of pouches from all the big brands containing more sugar in one pouch than a one-year-old should have in an entire day.
Oh, my goodness.
But, yeah, we also found that often on those pouches it would say that there was no added sugar. And what the experts say there is that that kind of messaging is really confusing for parents.
It really is. No, I suppose they haven't added any sugar.
They haven't added
so it
extra
says no
sugar.
Added sugar?
Yeah, the sugar is coming from the fruit, but it's processed fruit. And so it does react differently in the body. Your body treats it a bit different from, like, eating an actual piece of fruit.
Charlotte, I think a lot of parents get quite scared about the S word. You know,
definitely.
In terms of what, we all want our kids to eat fruit, so we always get a little confused about what sugar, what sugar intake is good and what's bad.
Exactly. And I think this term free sugars, which is what the government uses, is actually really confusing. But if I can just quite simply break it down, if you take a whole piece of fruit, there is sugar in there, but it's within the intrinsic cells and there's lots of fibre in that. Once you blend that, those sugars become much more readily available. The cells are broken down, and so that sugar is much more readily absorbed and digested. And also it comes along with much less fibre because the fibre has been broken down. So it has a much bigger impact on blood sugars, and also it's much easier to get a huge amount of sugar in that way.
But then when I'm making a smoothie for my son, and I'm sticking in, I don't know, spinach or apple, like, is that lessening the impact of the smoothie by blending it?
So because you're combining it with other things, you're going to lessen, you're going to dilute the impact of the sugar. But also at the same time, when you're doing it at home, you're less likely to be breaking that fruit down to such a degree. You're also using all parts of the fruit, whereas often in manufacturing, only the parts of the fruit that are really easily blended will be used. And also they'll be blended quite significantly, so you'll end up with a very, very blended, quite a lot of free sugars within that product.
And heated as well. They'll be heated
and
too.
heated.
Catrin, we've run out of time. What do you want to take home for this, for the Dr. B, for your research?
I think the most important thing for me is information. Parents should have as much information as possible, and then they can make their own decisions about whether they want to use them, how often they want to use them. And I think when it comes to feeding babies, it can't be just the companies selling them, giving you information about how good or bad they are.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Such a good thing to watch. You can watch The Truth About Baby Food Pouches on BBC iPlayer now.
Thank you so much for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every single day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the morning.